Hello and welcome to 60 Minutes or Less, a podcast from Birthday Cake for Breakfast. I'm Andy Hughes, and for episode 68, it's a delight to welcome back Alex Edkins of METZ and Weird Nightmare. One of the earliest guests in the life of 60 Minutes or Less, having appeared on episode 8, there's been quite a bit of change for Edkins since then, notably power trio METZ calling it a day in late 2024. With it being maybe a final chance to see them, it was a total joy to fly to Berlin to catch one of their farewell shows, a perfect send-off for three noise rock heroes. With a new Weird Nightmare album on the horizon, Hoopla, which came out in May 2026 via Sub Pop and Dine Alone Records, I caught up with Alex over Zoom in April 2026 to talk about the Met's indefinite hiatus, appearing on TV with John Mulaney and Richard Kind, British punks, and Weezer hot takes. If you like the episode, let us know. Follow us on your favourite streaming platform and follow Birthday Cake for Breakfast on all the socials. Give us a like, give it a share, etc. Right, on to Weird Nightmare. Enjoy. It's cool seeing that. It's not a video podcast, but it's cool seeing your album cover literally right behind your head.
Yeah,
That is
there
pretty
it is.
gnarly. Yeah. We normally start these off differently, but that is so that was that pre like have you liked that artwork for a while and that's been behind you that entire time or
Well, no, I liked the artist, Jamie Morrison. He had done some merch for me in the early days of the Weird Nightmare, and then I asked him to make something for the album. So the album was done, and I sent him the album. He listened to it, and he came up with this, and I loved it.
that is pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah,
Nice to have like a piece of artwork that's on a record literally as your in your living
yeah,
room or wherever it
it's
is.
got
Yeah.
a prominent place in our house. So
Is that how you're gonna do things from now on, Alex? You're gonna like any record you release, 7-inch covers, anything, it's gotta go up in the front room before.
well, oddly enough, man, I've always done that. I've got a lot of the photos from the METZ records. Those were taken by my dad when he was younger. And I have those up in the house, down in my studio, all kinds of. So yeah, I guess I do collect. I like to have a little keepsake of each record.
That is cool. Does that include the we will move on in a minute, but does that include the Atlas vending one with the like the fingertips?
Yep. Yep, that's one of his. That's one of my dad's photos.
Wow.
He was a hobbyist photographer, and I used to always look through his old photos when he was in his 20s or something. So, like, I guess in the 60s. And some of them always stood out to me, and that was one of them that always stood out to me.
Very cool. Very cool to be able to have that as well. But yeah, so how do we find you other than the artwork adorning your walls? How do we find you? How's everything going?
Good. 2 weeks away from the album coming out, and tomorrow I head to Toronto to do some rehearsing because we're playing in New York City this weekend. So busy times, but exciting too.
Good. The last time we saw you was in Berlin when you were playing with Metz and Cola with support.
Yeah.
And we spoke with you after the show, and I thought it was really funny how you reacted to Cola going off to Berghain. Like they were
Yeah.
going off into the night to do that, and you were like, no way. Do
Yeah,
you
no,
recall?
all the three of
Yeah.
us were all going to bed.
Yeah. I mean, by all means, like go out for more beers and all the rest of it, but Berghain seemed big step.
Was never my world. I mean, I'm fascinated by that, but never my world. It was always punk clubs and stuff like that. So I think I would like to see it. I don't know. I've heard it's incredible, but have you dabbled?
No, I think I'm in the same boat as you, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
The idea of that, particularly now, is just yeah, no way. But
I think,
did you?
yeah, in my 20s or 30s, I'd probably be game, but it takes out all of my energy to, I don't know, just to do a rock gig, even.
Did you get any intel from them as to how Berghain went? Did they show up the next day
I
looking
never chatted
sprightly?
with them after. I'm sure it was awesome.
I can believe it. But that run of shows with METZ, it must have been amazing because the Berlin show was really special because we're used to obviously UK shows, but I suppose with the band you're here, there, and everywhere. But it really went off in Berlin.
It did.
Was that whole run, particularly special?
The Berlin one stands out a little bit, but yeah, the whole run was very emotional and had so many great chats with people who have been coming out to our shows for just under 20 years. So it was like a family reunion in every city in a lot of ways. And I think we were playing really well. I think we were all in a good space, at least enough to do it justice. So like, yeah, I'm glad you were at that one. That was like an absolute highlight, I think. But there were a lot of highlights.
And the album Up on Gravity Hill, literally, I saw the other day, came out like 2 years ago. We will move on from Met shortly, but it had quite the swan song, with appearing on John Mulaney's TV show, which was crazy to see. But
Yep.
he seems to have been like a real champion, particularly for your solo stuff and Met's as well. So how was that, appearing like on his TV show? One minute he's there with Richard Kind, and then the next minute you're on and the three
Yeah.
of you were playing that big show. How was that like as a send off?
It was madness, really. It was one of those. There's no real way to explain it. The surreal is one. We were there all day on a Hollywood sound stage. We walk out the door and see the Hollywood. So it was fun that we got to do a kind of like a late night show because that until then we hadn't had that opportunity. And yeah, John was great. John's a fan of weird music, man. He's like really into a lot of cool stuff. So to find out that he had been a supporter for years and that he went out of his way to get us felt really nice. And we felt, more than welcomed by him and his people. So yeah, completely nuts. Got to meet Conan O'Brien, do the whole thing. So it was trippy and fun. And I'm glad we kind of did this strange and I guess it made some ways it just makes sense that it was weird like that. It felt appropriate.
With the snow falling down as well
Yeah,
and the
like it was a
whole
Christmas episode, like very bizarre.
a Christmas miracle to have the Mets back for just a short while. So you mentioned the new record, Hoopla, the Weird Nightmare record, your solo release, is out in 2 weeks. So it'll already be in the
Yep.
distance when this comes out. But I read that you used to work in a record store. And so, you must have handled so many records in your lifetime. But is it still special, getting a copy of your own record, particularly when it's a new one and literally having that physical format and, what lies
Yeah, I
ahead?
mean, I love it. It is special, but I've always been fascinated by records and vinyl and artwork and liner notes. I find it endlessly captivating. So, yeah, but I mean, certainly after you've been through demoing, like writing something, demoing it, maybe scrapping half of it, rewriting, going to record, mixing, mastering, artwork, then getting it pressed, there's so many steps and it's so time consuming that it is a special moment when you do get to hold that thing. I mean, it may not last long. I know for me, I always joke about how I'm always impressed by people who are, cognizant enough to take that moment and celebrate, like they go, "Oh, we're going to have a open some champagne or something." I'm just always like on to the next thing. But for that split second, you are definitely like, "Wow, okay, cool." Looks great, sounds great, and certainly feeling that way about Hoopla. It was just like I got a box of them maybe a week ago or a week and a half ago, and yeah, always feels special and just feel lucky to be able to make a record. These days it's a gift.
And the word gift is kind of true as well in the sense of, whenever you open like a parcel like for a new record, it is always cool. But to be able to do that with your own release, particularly if people haven't heard it yet, that must be so special.
Yeah, and it just feels, this one just feels so different because I really hope that it puts a smile on people's face. It's the first time I tried to make something uplifting, if you will. Just because that's where my head was at musically. I wanted to make these big choruses that stuck in your head. And so I hope that it's one of those, I waited till spring to put it out. I hope people can put it on and walk around their city and feel good for half an hour. It's a little presumptuous to think that way, but that would be really cool if that happened, even for some people.
Do you ever think about, records, like you say, for it coming out in spring? Do you ever think like, I'm going to release this record, then that's how the vibe is, like you say, uplifting with Hoopla? Did you ever like have for the first record or any METZ records, did you ever envision like the listener and their experience and how they'd take it all in?
I don't know if we ever had the luxury of planning it out like that. We were such a kind of machine that it would be like record, tour, 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 record. And so it was sort of like, I think usually the sooner it was out, the better. But not that that never affected our writing process or anything. But yeah, I'm trying to think of it. I don't think we ever really discussed that for METZ Records. And this is kind of the first time I've had the luxury to do so because I made sure to like, even though this album was done before that last METZ tour, I decided, I took time off the road and took time to kind of take stock of everything and moved cities and did a whole bunch of things that, because of the intensity of what I was doing and the nonstop kind of vibe of it, had been putting on the back burner. So there was a bunch of things I had to give the necessary time to. So that felt good. And then because I was able to sort of pick and choose, it felt like, yeah, like a not a winter record. Not I felt like it would be smart to wait. But I think sometimes, yeah, records do have the ability to put you in that mood. Like I'm thinking of this record by Jezu. Forget what it's called. It's got a white snowy cover, but I always think of that and some Sigur Rós records as like ultimate snowy winter albums, and this is definitely not that vibe. So
It's similar to you. Like we interviewed Brian Case from Fax, and their last record came out. I think it might have came out early in the year, but we heard it when it was literally snowing outside,
yeah,
and it was so still that record, and it suited the mood perfectly. So similar to you. But
cool.
you are quite right that with Hoopla, it's very like uplifting, isn't it? And very like summer haze.
Yeah, like I don't even know if I was conscious of that, but I remember I sent it to my friend Jason Narducci, who plays in Superchunk and Bob Mold, and he was always someone I would send the Weird Nightmare records to, and he was like, "Whoa, man, lots of major chords," and it was like, "Oh, I wasn't really aware," but so I think it is like a different approach for me, and I hope it gets a smile on people's face. That would be cool.
So you talked about the luxury of when you were able to put it out, but in terms of the actual production and stuff, the first Weird Nightmare record, you recorded it at home during the pandemic.
Yeah.
You were kind of stuck really in that respect. You didn't have much choice. Whereas with this new record, it sounds like you had a whale of a time with, Seth Manchester and I have got his name somewhere, Jimmy,
Yeah.
from Spoon.
Yeah.
Do you think you could have made another record like the pandemic record, the first Weird Nightmare record? Or is it a lot better for you as a working wise to be able to get in the studio with people and bounce off ideas and be less
Well,
insular?
I like it all. I think that that process of being alone and working through things happens anyway. That's always like the beginning of every song for me. So that's going to happen, but then it's just a matter of, it seemed like more of a challenge and more fun to do a big studio great sounding album as opposed to, again, like it's just, I feel like life is short and I want to try to do it in different ways. So it's like having done that sort of lo-fi because it had to be record. Now it was like, well, now I can go and have a budget for it, and I can make it sound awesome. So that was just felt like a nice change, and I'm glad we did that. And like you mentioned, the team that I was working with was just amazing, and we had an amazing time doing it. It was just like one of the easiest and most fun experiences in the studio I've had.
You said as well that, Jim and Seth, working with them, they were like your guiding lights during the making of the record. So how was it, hooking up with them by the sounds of it? Well, I know you've worked with Seth Manchester with METZ Records and stuff,
Yeah.
but it sounds like Jim is a friend of yours as well. So how was it just getting them involved and having everyone under the same roof, so to speak?
It was Seth's idea, and it was very lucky. It was serendipitous because Jim was moving his studio back to his hometown. I think like he was moving it from Austin, Texas, to back to Providence, and moving his whole family. So it was just down the street, or 15 minutes or so away from Seth's studio. So it was Seth's idea to go, hey man, I know you're a big Spoon fan. You should ask Jim to be involved. And I said, okay, sure. And I phoned him up, not never having met, and he was into it. I sent him the demos and things, and he was down. So immediately we all kind of clicked, and it was just easy. Which I think it's the way it should be. When you have the right people and they have the right mindset and the right skill set, it's an easy thing. And so we just went in there and tracked it pretty much live. And then, I had this treasure trove of amazing gear that Jim brought, and also just his years of experience making great sounding albums. So, I leaned on them when almost for the fun of it, like if I was like, well, I think I know I want this to sound or how I want this to go, but like, what do you think? And, it's such a blessing to have people like that in your corner. Well, have you thought of this? Have you tried? And of course, half the time I had never thought of it and never, even heard of some of the techniques and things. So super fun, learned a lot, and like love how it turned out.
As well as those two, the word luxury, you've said it before, and it sounds like that was the case with your rhythm section as well. You did a feature
Yeah.
for us around the single Forever Elsewhere, and you said of drummer Lowell Campbell and bassist Roddy Richmond that they were like two of the best players you've come across.
Hmm.
How did you go into it picking players? So obviously you've got Seth and Jim in the production side of things, but how do you go about picking players for a new project?
Well, with Lowell, he's a really sought after session drummer, but we met through friends, and I didn't really know his background, and we just really got along really well, and liked talking about music and things like that. So he's been on every single Weird Nightmare song that's been released. So I used to send him stuff, and then he'd play on it. He lives out east in Canada. So we used to just do it that way. Sometimes I'd play on some of his songs, like just, enjoying each other's input. So that was a no brainer. I mean, if there was anyone else who's part of this band, it's him, it's Lowell. He's just been involved from day one and a supporter. So that was easy. And working with him is a joy. And then Roddy, I did a Scandinavian tour on the first Weird Nightmare record, and it was opening for Daniel Romano and the Outfit. And in order to make that tour work financially, I asked the headlining band's rhythm section if they would play with me. And they did. Ian and Roddy did, and they killed it. And it was just one of those things where immediately I felt very comfortable playing with those guys. And so again, when the time came, it was like no one else was even in my mind. So I like when things like that happen. Same with the artwork for the album that we're discussing. It's like I didn't. It's not like I had a list or anything. It was like obviously that's how it's gonna be, and that's not always the case. Sometimes these things can be a struggle, right? And this album, things just lined up really nicely in a lot of different ways that made it made me not question the decision making. It was just like, I think this is right. So definitely with Roddy and Lowell, who played on the album, I had no question that they'd bring something awesome to the table.
You've been around the block making records, appearing on other people's records and such. So I imagine when you go out there to ask these questions like, do you want to help produce the record? Can you be my backing band? It's possible that people are going to say yes to you anyway. But I was interested to hear you just say, that it doesn't always work out like that and it doesn't line up. Have you ever had, probably less so asking people to be in your band, but have you ever had that where things just don't click into place, like, production doesn't work or phone calls don't get returned or what have you?
Oh, sure. I mean, all the time. But I haven't done much of that, but I definitely have no problem with, reaching out to someone I've never met and just sort of saying, "Hey, I love what you do." Thankfully, most of the time people are in this scene or this music making world, that I live in. They're usually down and they want to be, yeah, okay, let's make something and see how it goes. There's only one time that we asked like a absolute hero of ours to be on a song and they said yes, but then we didn't end up using the part, and to this day it still kills me. But we had consensus within the three members. It was just like, don't think it's working, and we all want to cry, but but we're not gonna. It's not gonna be on the track. So most of the time it works great, and I would suggest to all people, if you have an idea, even if it's far fetched, you should probably just give it a shot. Can't hurt, So someone saying no, it's not a big deal.
I'm glad you said that, Alex. I've got some idea. No, I'm joking. But how do you like battle with that sort of thing where it's kind of like having to keep a straight face, but you know that for whatever reason it's not working, like the track you were talking about. How do you contend with that sort of thing where you just have to kind of put it to one side and put it to bed?
I don't know. I think I'm pretty blunt about stuff like that. I try not to sugarcoat things. It doesn't really get you anywhere. And I end up working with people who are like, I think mature enough to and do enough, like they're not precious about it where they'd be offended. So yeah, you just gotta be straightforward, I think. Like, it's not working, let's try something else. And I really appreciate when people are like that. So that's kind of how I've always been. I would not beat around the bush, you know. And I've never been in a situation, I don't think, like while producing a record or something where I've hurt anyone's feelings. I don't think I've done that, but I don't know for sure.
That's a future podcast episode, I'm sure. So we talked about, the record. It's very bright, it's very springy. There's still, I found, like the Met's blueprint in places in terms of your songwriting. And songs like Little Strange have definitely got that vibe. It could be easily on one of the previous Met's records. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of your songwriting styles, other than, going for that brighter sound and looking more positive, what is like the difference in the way that you write for METZ and then the way you write for Weird Nightmare? Is there much in it, or is it different for
I,
each release?
I don't know if there's much of a difference other than I think, and I've touched on this a little bit in other interviews, but I think in heavy music, there's a riff based thinking. Maybe definitely with Hayden, it was a beat rhythm based thinking where everything has to fit on that. So it can limit you, but also it can take you into really interesting places. So, but to answer your question, I think the big difference is that Weird Nightmare is more melodically driven, not driven, sorry, but the melody leads the way, and it leads sort of like what the song needs, and what all the other instruments are doing are kind of serving, I think, the hook or the melody. And that wasn't always, I don't think that's always the case in some of the other songs I've done with METZ. And like it was just going for going for a different overall vibe, and melody and vocals became more and more of a thing in METZ, but was always a focus, but it was never the focus. I think the three instruments first were what we were working out together. So yeah, that's really the obvious switch, I think, is that starting off more with the lyric or the melody and letting that dictate where it goes.
It's interesting you say, towards the end of METZ, different styles start to creep in. And it's definitely true, like songs like A Boat to Drown In, there's definitely a different kind of vibe. And then
Yeah.
it pretty much, I think we talked about this last time we spoke, it kind of almost went tailed into the next album. The opener kind of, back and tails the two songs. But like also there was utilizing female vocals at times. And
Yep.
you've done that with Weird Nightmare in the past as well. Who did you get involved this time around, and how was that process as well? Leaning more into that sort of material.
That was again just meeting cool people who you think are, great. Juliana Riolino sings on two songs on this record, and she's just a phenomenal writer and singer. And we did a trade more or less. I played guitar on three of her songs on her new album, and she sang on some of mine. So, just sort of a tip of the hat to people that you are fans of. That's the way I do it. There's never for me been any kind of like thinking of it as a commercial collaboration. I know that's probably a big, it is a big thing that happens now, how you can cross promote, but it's more about if that person's style fits that song that you're thinking of. So when Juliana sang on Might See You There, it just lifted that chorus in a beautiful way, I thought, and it's like fit the vibe, and not much more to it than that.
It's really sad to think, I'm sure obviously you wouldn't say this if it was the case, but it's really sad to think, oh well, if we combine this person with my music, we can get a collaboration on Instagram. And
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm sure that doesn't come into it, with the circles you run in, but like how do you, see the way that people are consuming stuff these days in terms of that? I know it's a big question, but in terms of like collaborations and such.
Mm. I don't. The whole thing's a mystery to me. Like the streaming world, I don't know how it works. It's not to say that I don't want to know. I'm interested. I find, but I think it's a bit of a mystery to even people who work in PR and who work at labels. Like it's sort of like, oh, I don't know why this isn't doing this like this other song did. So people are just, I think, constantly trying to just garner attention any way they can. And so sometimes that's trying something that's been done. Sometimes that's trying something new. But it really is a confusing time to be releasing music. I think I don't know if anyone knows what the right way to do it is. So I think you just stick to what you know and some ethos that you believe in that you don't have issues with. I think is key. Just you know, and you hope that you can find your audience with the record you've made. So, for me, I still, and METZ, this is true too. We were lucky enough that our fans loved vinyl as much as we did, and we that was our bread and butter. It's like we'd sell records, and I'm thankful for that. And same with this. This is sort of like I hope that this is a record that people want in their collection because that can make a tour feasible in a way that even a viral song on Spotify can't do. You know what I mean? So it does seem bizarre that we're all sort of still gunning to win at this system that still at the end of the day wouldn't really do any good for you other than this little blip. I'd be very happy to not play that game.
Yeah,
It's confusing.
play the vinyl and selling long sleeves game over.
I love that. I mean, I think that's the way to do it. I think if you can get people in a room and you can get people who want to own your album, the physical copy or the digital copy, but if, they need to invest in the artists that they love, that's how it works. And we don't need the tech middlemen at all.
I know that when me and my pals, saw we'd be just as interested in a METZ song or a Weird Nightmare song, but we'd be even more interested in the new merch has just dropped, the longies, so it's I think like you say, you're lucky in a sense that your fan base is with you on that sort of journey, really.
Yeah, it's a family, it's a gang. I think when you find your people, and I think we all fell into this style of music or punk or hardcore for a reason that I can't put my finger on. But when you do find it, you find an international family where you already have shared interests and loves, and so I find that those are my people at those shows, and I love that.
Quick break in the interview just to give you a heads up about some of our previous episodes. From our first episode to our latest, we featured interviews with the likes of Proto Martyr, The Lovely Eggs, Anna Erhard, Chat Pile, The Future Heads, Public Service Broadcasting, Gang of Four, Joshua Idehen, The Jesus Lizard, and even snooker legend Steve Davis. Treat yourself and go back through the episodes. Be sure to tell all your friends and comrades too. Enjoy! The video for Pay No Mind, I read that it was inspired by videos from Elvis Costello and Buzzcocks too, like Buzzcocks in terms of a TV thing they did or something
Yeah.
similar. There's a bit of that sort of DNA in what you do too, certainly sartorially with Elvis Costello in like the new videos and such.
Yeah.
Did you have either of those down or that sort of material? Because we'll come on to it in a minute. I read about the undertones as well. But did you ever have like Buzzcocks or Elvis Costello in your influences list, or is it all on the visual?
Oh no, certainly. I would say certainly love that music. More and more, I've been loving like the 70s punk because I feel like it's so melodically driven. It's crunchy and it's fast and it's exciting, but it's like to me, even something like The Damned or Vibrators or even the Sex Pistols, like end of the day, kind of just really great written songs that maybe a bit more snarl than people were used to at the time, but yeah, no, certainly that. And I think of Elvis Costello's first couple records as pretty slamming, pretty punky, a little bit. I guess it's called new wave, but yeah, so it was pulling visually from specific like moments, but I don't think I would have even, been aware of those if I didn't love the music as well.
It's interesting with those Elvis Costello records as well, because like he's going on tour soon and they're pushing it as he's doing those first couple of albums. It's going to be
Really?
unique. And the reality is it's like you say, those are some big tunes. So it's like that's perfect for someone like me. Similarly, as I say, I read that you were listening to the undertones quite a bit. And those first two records are just wall to wall rippers, very
Hmm.
quick, so much fun in there, and also just like really catchy, really hooky. Listen to the record, I would have thought more American, like 80s alt classic rock and stuff like that. But like, yeah, other than, the Damned and people like that, are there any other sort of influences that were catching you out during production or?
I can never put my finger on it. Like, might see you there, oddly enough. I think of that as a bit of a latter day Ramones type of thing as far as the production goes, like the Spectre produced stuff. We were talking about that in the studio, like, oh, maybe we do a little piano thing here or some bells. But I don't. I know that it doesn't sound like the Ramones, but it's like, yeah, it's funny where your head can draw comparisons. So, like that's one. Pay No Mind, I think, started as more of like just when I was writing it, as more of like a Devo riff, little janky thing that then turned into something that I wasn't expecting. So, yeah, it always starts from a kernel, and then I don't know how, or why it goes where it goes, but if you're mentioning stuff like American stuff like the Replacements and Tom Petty and stuff, like that's definitely brings me a lot of joy too. Like, Sugar, that's all what I consider inspiring guitar rock with great melodies. That's definitely definitely in there. I mean, I think at this point, and we've talked about this over the years many times, but my whole thing is I just want to sound like me. My record collection, I don't think it should be obvious what I'm listening to or what I'm digging. It should just somehow get broken down into its very, very minute pieces that then come out in a very true way through you. So that's kind of what I hear in this record, and I hope that's the case with listeners too.
I suppose that's really the way anything should be, isn't it? Like it all funnels into the mix and then comes out through you as the driving
Yeah,
force.
because when someone's too on the nose of something, to me, it's just like I can't really enjoy it. I'm always kind of okay. Well, it's really well done, but it's an homage, and I'm definitely not trying to do anything like that. Where some people, oh, I'm really good at sounding like a '60s band or something. It's like I can get into that and I can respect it, but I don't want to do it. It's like I don't like the throwback thing as much. But it's not like I don't see that there's tons of skill involved and all of that.
So I've not brought him up on the podcast in a long time, but I always used to dip into Lindsey Buckingham territory in terms of, that sort of studio exploration and stuff. So you mentioned, oh, let's put some bells on here, let's put some Spectre type keyboards, keyboards and piano. Have you ever gone the other way with it? And similarly, with scrapping a collaboration in the past, have you ever gone the other way with it where things in the studio just have reached another level and it's like, let's slow down
Oh,
or
all the time, all the time. I can drive people crazy because my patience for trying things like that is like unlimited. I'm happy as can be to be trying 10 other things, go into the night and try just so that we know we tried it and that it's, even if it doesn't work, I still think that's time well spent. I know a lot of people who can't stand that kind of approach of like trying every little thing. So certainly there was moments on this record or like overdubs, mostly stuff like that were scrapped. And I mean, Jim is a great example of that with Spoon. Though I think their approach was always build up and then strip way back. And that's like when you hear something like Kill the Moonlight, it's often like 2 to 3 instruments at a time, and it kicks ass. I certainly didn't do anything to that. That I didn't go minimal in that way, but I think that's brilliant when you can do it.
I love that sort of stripping away. Like I remember seeing a band, like a local band, and throughout time you just saw the guy's kit getting so small, and they got better, I think, as it got smaller, and it was just so it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it, really? And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously you can go over the top and add lots of stuff to it. So in terms of the record itself, and Weird Nightmare as a project, I remember around the first album you did a feature for us, and you said that this was like about finding joy in music again, and you've kind of touched on it in the at the start of the interview. But how long had that sort of material been inside you in terms of Weird Nightmare, and what made you make the switch when you did?
There was always certain songs that I had written that didn't fit with METZ. So I guess there was, but I didn't have an outlet for them. So maybe they were always there, but as the story goes, it took the world coming to a halt for me to feel like I could do that and get my confidence up to do that. So, yeah, I don't question things too much. Like, I don't question why things happen too much. I just follow my instincts. And this type of thing right now for me is absolutely like feels great, and it feels like the thing that I should be doing and that I'm good at and that I love doing. So it ticks all those boxes. And I think with anything there comes a time when, just in bands in general, I think maybe bands shouldn't last forever. When you see bands that do, there's usually a reason, and it's usually money. It's usually like we're a huge corporation at this point, Metallica or Weezer or something. They're still making records, and they've haven't made the quality of music that they had made for like 40 years, that in my opinion. So that's because of they're a huge financial force, right? So and then when you don't have that holding you back, you have to question and go, okay, like what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And I think it can be a tough thing to come to grips with, but also like a necessary one to do. So that's, I think I always knew I would always make more music, but it was just the three of us choosing, asking, okay, where's this going? And what do we want to do other things in life? That's how that decision was made. And then for me, it was that first Weird Nightmare record had been made and felt great. It like kind of changed my life in a way. Then that it kind of gave me this confidence that I didn't know I really had to step out, not alone because this wasn't made just by myself, but step out and do something else that I hadn't tried. So it was a slow kind of realization, I think, over time, and of course, a lot of things happening in between to get here. That's I don't have a clear explanation of why things happen. They kind of do.
It's lucky in a sense as well that, you mentioned Metallica, and another one I can think of is Foo Fighters. I assume that that was gonna end when the drummer passed, and then it was like, oh, they're playing a show next month or whatever. So it's lucky really that you guys were able to not be in that sort of, commodity where I'm not saying it's lucky that COVID came around, but it is kind of lucky that you were able to put the foot on the brake a little bit and not be
I,
strapped to this juggernaut.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it's obviously you'd always like for what you're doing to be more successful than it was or something, but like I said, with streaming and everything, it's just not in your control. And I'm, deeply proud of the years we spent together and the records we made, and I feel the same way about this new record and the music I'm still making. So yeah, certainly not like you like you said, money and that type of thing doesn't enter to the equation when you're doing it for the love of it.
So I could easily listen to your Weezer hot takes, but I will move on to the
Yeah,
final
let's
point.
not.
I won't put you in the hot water, but we were actually talking about that album that came after Maladroit the other day, and I was like, man, that came out like 25 years ago, and it's still dog shit. And then everything after that followed, It's yeah, not great. But I know some people stopped listening after Pinkerton, so fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of the new stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah. Best not get rivers on your back.
But
But
like this is the thing too. Not that I so this is I can never do a hot take because I always feel bad after. But like, you know, people got to live their life. They got to do what they want to do. And I'm not going to tell anyone not, to stop what they love doing. That's crazy. Do what you got to do and love it. And I think more people who do that, the world would be, a better place.
for sure. And that kind of segs into, we've touched on it already. You pretty much mentioned it from the off, but with the with the single Forever Elsewhere, you've said it's like an optimistic song, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
most optimistic song you've written to date, to send an unequivocal positive message into the world. Great quote, a pep talk wrapped in fuzzy guitars. Equally, you said to us in a feature you did for us that this is not some Bono type shit, which was
Mm.
equally just as valid. Do you think it's important more than ever to promote that sort of outlook and to have that sort of feeling, at least for half an hour, like you say, with the record being like
Yeah,
positive?
I don't know what else to do. I wish I had the answers. I don't think preaching like that was, I guess, the Bono thing. Like preaching like what the answers is not the way either. So I think punk is this righteously joyous thing. Like I always thought METZ was a deeply positive thing, although it was kind of screaming at the evils in the world. With this, it's a little bit more overtly about my life and about love and about, you know, a little bit more day-to-day things, but I still think that that message and a catchy hook and stuff can put a smile on my face, and I need a smile nowadays sometimes because it can beat you down. So what sometimes is the best thing to do is to put on that new Converge record and feel that, and then sometimes you want to put on the opposite feeling. And I love all of it. I love that we have that in us as people to feel all of that and to create with those feelings coming to the fore. So yeah, didn't feel like a stretch, felt like that's where I'm at. It felt like the natural thing.
Eloquently put, and it's very positive to be in such a headspace to be able to, yeah, rather than be in a position where things might not be so rosy.
Yeah, and that's not to say that days aren't tough. It's like everyone's going through these ups and downs. I just chose to I think there's probably a 50-50 optimist pessimist vibe on this record, and that compared to 100% pessimist is what I did in the past is feels notable.
That's great, man. I'm glad that things are going so well for you, and loved the entire time looking at that painting of the artwork behind you.
Thank you.
But yeah, appreciate you coming on, and it's always good to hear new material from you, Weird Nightmare or otherwise. But yeah, appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, man. Hope you're good.
Yeah, all's good, man. I'll cut it there. But yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much, man. Appreciate it as ever.
Yep. Always a pleasure. I really look forward to our chats.